Hitchens Razor Guard.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Hitchens Razor Gang Show. I'm Googs and with me today is Jessie.
Hi everybody.
And we're here today to discuss on our inaugural show, just for you, Milo's tour of Australia, because we were lucky enough to be a ticket holder for the Perth show.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
It was a very interesting experience and we had a great time. There were quite a few laughs and some interesting revelations that we weren't expecting, and some of the, to put it nicely, stupidest protesters in Australia. We went down to the Perth Convention Centre around about 5:30 p.m, expecting to see a whole bunch of people with signs, no KKK, no racist Australia or whatever it is, Milo is a Nazi, bigot, whatever. And instead what we saw was about somewhere between 500 to 600 young school kids, all in costume.
Yeah, initially I thought that Milo had done the biggest troll job in history. He's gotten a bunch of school kids out there, these were like under 10s, that sort of range, out there to do some sort of big cheer for when he turned up. And I just thought that could have been great.
And I tell you what, I still want that to be true. Even though we discovered later that it wasn't. When you first said that to me, I went, that is the most brilliant plan ever devised by anyone. And Milo didn't do it. Look, if we ever get a following, mate, we're going to have to do that now.
Absolutely. Next time he comes out,
yeah? To get all these school kids.
Yeah, that would make a great Facebook buy and sell. Looking for 400 under 10-year-old kids.
With parental permission, of course.
Yeah, of course, yes. I think we'll very quickly get a policeman knocking on the door.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we saw all these school kids and, not being Perthites ourselves, we sort of looked around and went, okay, what's going on here? And we kind of felt a bit weird, these two middle-aged white guys walking around with all these kids. And so we got out of there, didn't we? We went, I think we went into the city after that for a bit.
We did. We had a bit of a walk around, and then, of course, we found out why all these kids were there.
Yeah, it was the Perth Christmas Parade, which goes up and down St George's Terrace, pretty much the full length of St George's Terrace in the city.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly a surprise to me. I thoroughly enjoyed walking around. This was before the parade. Everyone's lining up and getting ready and walking around and seeing all sorts of different people.
But the funny thing is, the funny side note is we didn't actually intend to find out what was going on. We actually just wanted a bottle of water. And so we walked pretty much all the way around, well, not all the way around, but through at least half of the Perth CBD, looking at all these wonderful people in costumes going, where's the water? And ironically, the water was no more than 20 feet from the doors of the convention centre, which, look, we could have joined the protesters, I guess, if we didn't want to watch Milo.
But yeah, so that was a bit of stuff up on our side. But we had time to waste. That was the issue.
Yes. It was just, we really wanted to bring you guys, for our first show, we wanted to bring you guys something extraordinary, something explosive, true freedom of speech. So we wanted to talk to people, the protesters. We wanted to see what they thought about Milo. We wanted to talk to the people going and seeing Milo, who were big fans of Milo Yiannopoulos, and it just did not happen. And it's one of those things that I think put a little bit of a downer on the night. Maybe we should have gone to Melbourne.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we got there very early in order to see people rocking up, just to have a look who. And look, fair enough, there was no one there. We hang around for an hour, did a lap around the city, and then people started arriving, sitting inside Perth Convention Centre. Unfortunately, people coming in ones and twos, very hard to approach, because what might be a sign of our times, everyone's just sitting there, head down on their phones.
Yeah, but the thing is that the minute you say, all the people were looking head down on their phones, that brings up an instant idea in everyone's mind. And if it does, you might be correct, audience, the demographic was skewed young.
It was really a lot younger than I thought it was going to be. Initially, I thought it would be people our age and older, so that's sort of, let's say, 35 and over. And I was fully expecting the skinheads and not so much the tiki torches, but certainly a lot of Make America Great Again hats and things like that.
To be fair, though, I was wearing my Hail Bacon shirt.
That was very impressive. I believe you got a few comments about that.
I did indeed, and the interesting thing though is the age. It wasn't just the age. I mean, obviously there was a majority of the audience was male, was white, but there were little groups scattered throughout of people who were just interested in what they say. We met a young Asian lady from I'm assuming from Korea, and she was only 14.
Yeah, that was a shock. She was there by herself.
And
we also, but we met the 30-something-year-old lady with purple hair, who interestingly had Milo was her free pass from her husband. So I'm not sure how that was going to work.
Well, it was interesting because she had purple hair and she wasn't a feminist. That was also interesting. Yeah. But anyway, we go in and we'll put a photo here or something. You guys can see what's going on. Mm-hmm. We're looking back down the line now. The protesters and people like that said, "Oh, they'll be lucky to sell 100 tickets. They'll be lucky to sell 10, 50." There was at least 1,000 people there. There was 2 lines, and it was backed all the way down the convention centre.
Yeah, it was very impressive. It was a little bit more than I thought was going to turn up. Yeah, I was very happy with it. We were lucky enough to be right at the front. We were 5 people back. And
turning up an hour and a half does that for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But we turned up, they made us wait an hour in line, as is customary for this kind of thing. The security people were all very nice, no problems there. Lots of the camera guy from Penthouse was wandering around, talking to a few people.
Yeah, he was, and so the funny thing is the Penthouse guy was around. And he was taking those. At one stage, he took a photo. Anyone who knows the convention centre, we were up in convention room A, which is up on the, I guess you'd say the Barrack Street end, and he was up there taking his photos of everyone, and I was just waiting for you get those flash nude scenes where just people just nude up and then they quickly take a photo and then they all get clothed again.
Yep.
Yeah, I was expecting that to happen. It's like, well, what's Penthouse up to?
Yeah, like a flash mob in the traditional sense.
Well, a flashy flash mob.
Yeah, that's right. But they certainly didn't talk to us. They seemed to be talking to
young people,
the younger crew.
Yeah. And once again, that's just it's really interesting because, myself, I'm a centrist, but before I came towards the centre, the old red pill, if you like, I was very much on the left with most things before I sort of skewed more towards the centre. And my idea, even to this day, of conservative is, like you said, middle-aged or older, the old stuck in the mud set. Yes. So for me to see all these young people sitting there going, wow, Milo has a message that's, he's not an old fellow himself. I mean, he's 33. Mm-hmm. But Milo has this message that seems to be resonating through the youth culture.
Yeah, he does.
And it's amazing.
It is. But anyway, we finally get in, as we're at the front, we've got to choose our seats sort of thing, and we're halfway back right directly in front sort of thing. Perfect spot in a movie theatre. Maybe a little too far back for this, but that's right.
Yeah, well, it was for my photo. It was on my camera anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And so it started off with the MC came out to give a few remarks, and surprisingly, actually, that was Andrew Bolt.
Well, yeah, because it was actually supposed to be the former Labor leader, Mark Latham. And, of course, Mark Latham, he's probably more of a centrist these days, but he certainly has a leftist background. I thought that would be interesting, because I quite like Mark Latham's Outsiders program. But it turns out to be probably the second biggest known conservative media pundit next to Alan Jones. And so immediately there was a little part of my mind that went, all right, I can see what's going to happen here and where it's going to be skewed politically, because he's a huge fan of say, Tony Abbott and Pauline Hanson and all these people. So I sort of set off bells in my head going, ooh, okay, the far-right conservative fix is in.
Yeah, I wouldn't I'm not a huge fan of his, although I'm not particularly against him either. But yeah, he spoke pretty much what we thought. You know, the jokes or the comments that he come out with that I have to admit you picked straight away.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
that was a highlight of my night because it's one of the few times I made a prediction that was actually worth anything. But you know, he says he comes up and he goes, you know, he revs the crowd and he goes, "I've got 2 words for you. Tell me what you think of these 2 words." And he goes, "Malcolm Turnbull." And of course, the crowd is immediately boo, 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 like unanimously. We don't like Malcolm Turnbull. And I turned to you and I said, the next, he's going to say 2 more words and he's going to say Tony Abbott.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, what the 4 next words out of his mouth are 2 words, Tony Abbott. And of course, the crowd went insane. I'm like, oh God, you know, you want to talk about a telegraph joke or a telegraph gag or anything like that. Jesus.
And that seemed to be the theme of the night, actually, which we'll get to as we go through it. But Andrew Bolt did his talk for 10 minutes and he was fine. Yeah. But then, actually, the sponsor of the event was the guy from Penthouse, Mr. Damon Costas.
The Greek.
Damon Costas was the highlight of the night for me. He was fantastic.
Oh,
he
well
was
spoken.
self-depreciating. You know, obviously, given what he does, he's the editor for Penthouse Magazine Australia.
Yeah.
And yeah, he spoke really well for his 10 minutes. His comments that he had, like obviously they get a lot of letters, and so one of the guys that kept emailing him was a guy on Facebook that shares a Facebook account with his wife, and their Facebook profile photo was proud owners of a gay dog. So naturally, these guys were emailing all the time, saying how disgusting it was that Milo was coming to Australia and that Penthouse was supporting them. But of course, Penthouse was opened on the idea of free speech. You know, they went through a lot of court cases to be allowed to publish.
Okay, so, can I just stop you there for a second? Now, you did say. I mean, actually forgot about this because this is a couple of weeks ago now. Could you just reiterate what they were a proud owner of, please?
Proud owner of a gay dog.
I mean, yeah, well, all right. Sorry about that.
I mean, and the way that he spoke about it, and he replied to their email eventually. He was working late one night after a couple of wines and replied to them. And I wish I could find a copy of that letter because it was amazing. Even if you don't agree with everything in it, it was amazingly written.
From memory, it ended with the 2 words, fuck you.
Yes. So, as I say, you may not agree with it all. But he certainly knew what he's talking about. He's obviously some sort of journalist, writer. Working for Penthouse, you'd have to be, obviously, because there's nothing else in them apart from articles.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was great. So from there, we went back to Andrew Bolt. Which was, in all he was doing was just introducing the man of the evening, the fabulous faggot himself, Milo Yiannopoulos.
And my God, what a spectacle. I mean, you've seen him on YouTube, maybe you don't care, whatever, but you see this man, he always makes an entrance. He is the quintessential Peter Allen flamboyant gay person.
Yes, that's a good way of describing him.
He comes in a white cravat, sort of light cottony top. Mm-hmm. He's got a beautiful gold, God knows how much it's worth, but a gold sequin jacket. He's got a nice pair of pants on, and then his feet, he's got ruby red sequined slippers. I mean, you want to talk about the Wizard of Oz, mate. Gee whiz.
And don't forget the frosted tips in the hair.
I was going to say the hair was immaculate. The sunglasses were on the face. The chain was around the neck. He looked like he'd escaped from, something. What was that bloody movie with John Travolta where he did Saturday Night Fever? That's what he looked like. He looked like an escapee from Saturday Night Fever without the chest hair.
Yeah.
He was absolutely magnificent to look at, and he stood there, and the most amazing thing happened as far as I'm concerned. He stood there, he bowed, and then the audience rose up. Now, very rarely do you see this. The audience, including ourselves, all rose up and gave him a standing ovation because here's somebody here who I may not agree with everything he says politically, but you can't deny his presence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It was pretty incredible. He, as you say, he has this presence about him. And I have to say, when I use the terms fabulous faggot and things like that, they are his terms that he uses. There's probably going to be a fair bit of language like that during this podcast. But, but he's up there, he's talking, he's really quite captivating. People are shouting from the crowd, he's having to go back at them, things like that. He comes out, and his first target is the first Australian.
I believe the first thing he says is he apologised that there was no welcome to country.
Yes.
and then he goes on, to say that his opinion. He didn't say in my opinion, but it certainly was his opinion only. That he thought that Aboriginal art was shit.
Yeah, I wasn't totally happy with the way he just dismissed it. If he had given a reason, I think I would have been better. Like if he had said it's Aboriginal art is shit because all it is a bunch of dots. I think I would have accepted that a bit better. Now, it's certainly his right to not like the art, but just to dismiss it out of hand I thought was a little bit off, but then again, that's what he's here for. He's a professional provocateur.
Yeah, it's freedom of speech. He's coming straight out his box on a contentious issue, and let's face it, Aboriginal European Anglo-Australian issue. I mean, it's ongoing. It's been happening for 200 years. It's not going away anytime soon. So if you're going to hit Australia on the most controversial topic we've got, that's it. And so that's what he was aiming at straight away. And it also told him where the crowd was at. It also gave him an idea of where the bigots were. Because he does play both sides. And the later the night went, the more I realised that he was not just playing the far left. But anyway, no, he came out and said Aboriginal artwork is shit, and their musical instrument, the didgeridoo and the clapping sticks, is so primitive and so horrible to listen to that's not worth listening to. Now, I don't agree with either of those statements. I quite think that the Aboriginal art, some of the Aboriginal art, especially the ones that tell the story, where you've got the people's footprints and they're following the kangaroo and they go and they hunt the kangaroo and then they bring it back for dinner or whatever it is, the dreaming sort of footprints ones. Yep. Love it. Art tells a story. But hey, Milo's not there to do anything but, as you say, provoke.
So he came out, and I think that was a good way to gauge the audience, to be honest.
Very good. I mean, the man is intelligent, and a part of that intelligence is being able to read your audience. It's almost like he's like a comedian, in the sense that the first joke a comedian tells is there to see where the audience is at, and then you can change the show as you need to.
Yep.
So that's the sense I got off that first one. It's like, right, where are the bigots? Where are the middle of the road? Are there any lefties in the room? Sort of thing. Yes. Start with the big guns, and then after I've done my little opinion piece, move on to the next subject, which was
feminism, or feminists.
and the unfuckable Clementine Ford.
Yeah. So everyone knows that he's had a bit of back and forward with Clementine Ford. He's not the biggest fan.
And neither she.
Neither she of him. I like the picture he had up was just 3 identical photos of Clementine Ford. And he reckons that's the only threesome she'll ever be in.
and I believe there was one other part that he said that really tickled your funny bone.
The fact that she had a kid was a testament to all turkey basters out there, which I actually thought was quite funny.
Oh, that was brilliant, that was. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what he said. I'm not a big fan of, not a fan at all of intersectional feminism, intersectional race relations, any of that shit. I'm 100% against. So I found that part well-versed. He knew a bit about Clementine Ford. He knew a bit about... there was another lady there he also made a comment of, the one with the half-shaved head.
Jessica Rowe.
That's the one from Channel 9. Mm-hmm. And so pretty much every single beat that you'd expect, he hit.
Yes.
He hit it well. It was well timed. It was well versed. I think he actually rehearsed that one quite well.
I think so.
It's probably the only bit he really did. But yeah. The feminist part for me, the whole show, was actually Milo at his best.
Yeah, I can tell you one bit that he really did rehearse, and that was, I'm sorry I called Clementine Ford a prick. That's really not fair to compare someone to something like that, and I'm sorry if I offended all the pricks out there. You know, very obvious joke. And
No, that's a dad joke. That's the sort of stuff we tell our kids.
That's right. Yeah, maybe not quite like that, but you know, it's the old switch up. You know, at the end, the bait and switch, if you like.
Yeah, it is the bait and switch.
Yeah, which is fine. It was funny, but it was a recurring joke throughout the whole thing for different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then I think he went from that to the ABC, Auntie ABC.
Yeah. Which is no doubt is very left these days.
Yeah, very, very progressive indeed. And it's all over the ABC. It's not just the television. It's also in their print. It's also on Triple J, Australia National, ABC AM. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the other partially owned government news agency he mentioned as well was SBS.
I don't think he spent a lot of time on them, though, did he? He sort of went from SBS to...
The Project.
The Project, thank you. Going on to Wahid Ali, who I'm not necessarily a fan of, although I do think he's very smart.
I think I agree with you. I mean, I don't like the guy personally. I mean, he seems to only want people to come onto his program that he knows he can destroy.
Yeah. I mean, he's a lawyer. There's no doubt he's very smart. He speaks well, but I just don't agree with a lot of his stuff. And you're right. Milo was complaining that Waleed would not have him on the show, wouldn't have him on the show live, wouldn't do a pre-taped interview. The project could edit it to make Waleed look good. They just wouldn't have him on at all.
No, and well, there's a reason for that, and that is that Milo is intellectually withered enough to be able to just knock them down a few pegs. And but Wahid Ali was really only there to segue into the next subject, which was Islam.
Yes, and he got there by showing Wahid Ali and his wife, who was, of course, a Muslim, wearing the full regalia.
Hijab,
fine.
Yep.
I'm going to go with full regalia, thank you.
Well, it could have been the kneecap if it was full regalia.
Wearing her clothes of choice, or the culture had thrust upon her. Anyway, so that got him on to Muslims, which of course for him is talking about immigration and things like that. So his big one was the UK. Like he is born in the UK, but he now lives in America. I'm not sure if he's an American citizen or not.
Yeah, he has a green card.
Okay. And he said that England is lost.
And Sweden.
And Sweden is lost, which I thought was a big call.
Well, define lost.
Well, for him, I believe he think that means that the left is going to take control, or the Muslims are going to take control. I know they're not the left, but it's lost. It's lost to right.
Socialist idea.
Yeah. Anglo.
Socialist. Yeah, socialist ideals and Islam. On one side, there's the socialist ideals of intersectionality, and on the other side, there's the right-wing fundamentalistic streams of Islam.
Yes.
And between the two, because one protects the other, and it's not Islam protecting the socialist ideals.
No.
So I think in that sense, he thinks like, I mean, and he's right to a point. But there was one thing in there that I absolutely loved. He brought up Poland in that time. You know, Sweden's lost, England's lost, and Germany's lost. I mean, all that sort of stuff. But then he mentions Poland, and the crowd erupted.
Yeah, that one bloke behind us. Wow, he was all for Poland.
Yeah, but he didn't have a Polish accent. But that's neither here nor there. But still, I mean, to be quite honest, Poland at the moment, it's not bowing to the intersectional pressures of socialism. Mm-hmm. It's not bowing to Islam, and it's not bowing to the EU. And it's interesting because out of all the countries sort of in Europe that got really majorly oppressed in World War II, you would be looking at, Czechoslovakia, Poland, the Ukraine, places like this. Well, Poland's standing up saying, we've seen this before, fellas, and no. I mean, for myself personally, I like Poland. Poland seemed to be, at least politically to me, They're standing their ground on their own traditions. They're standing their ground against the EU incursions, against the what I will call illegal immigrants into their country, against intersectional socialism, let's say, or Marxist, cultural Marxism.
Yes.
And I really admire that. But these people, they're the next level of admiration.
Yeah, these are... I mean, they're not quite the guys you see in Charlottesville and places like that, but they are the next step down. They seem to be that way anyway.
So they're not quite up to looting and pillaging and beating up people of a different ethnicity then?
Well, not yet, but give them time. You can grow into this stuff.
Hang on, what did we say earlier about tiki torches?
Yeah, that's right. Well, there was none there that I saw.
Well, I won't show you the little one I had in my back pocket. But anyway,
Yeah.
then sort of you went back to Sweden. But the interesting thing I found about Milo with Sweden was he only talked about one city. He talked about Malmo, right? So he didn't talk about Sarajevo, Jesus. Stockholm, which is the capital city, of course, or Skövde, which is, in the sort of urbanised cityscape of Sweden. He only concentrated on the city where the largest concentration of these illegal immigrants are based. And he used that as a crux for his entire argument for the entire country of Sweden, something like 82 million odd people. He chose a city with, 6 million people,
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a decent-sized city, but you can't say that it's representative. But basically by saying that he's lost, he means that the Muslims are going to take over and the left are supporting him, basically.
Yeah, and the other thing is that I found as well is he made mention of that the law that the Swedish have, which means that if somebody commits a crime, it's not the race, ethnicity, or culture isn't recorded, or religion. Sorry,
Yes.
and he really riled on that, and like as if this was like in the last 3 or 4 years since.
And when you hear him talking about it, it sounds bad. You think like the problem is that bad. In order to stop Islamophobia, they had to make it so that you didn't know who was committing these crimes.
The scary thing is I've got friends in Sweden, and I talk to them quite often, and that law has actually been in place since the late 90s. So we're talking pre-9/11, pre-Islamophobia. This is something that the cultural Marxist government of Sweden has been doing now for nearly 20 years.
Yeah. So Milo was not technically incorrect when he said that this law had been brought in. However, he was extremely misleading.
Now, the irony, of course, is taqiyya in Islam is lie by omission to get people to believe that Islam is a good religion. Mm-hmm. Well, if that wasn't a lie of omission, is Milo practicing a radical white form of taqiyya? Has he learned his lesson? No, I'm not accusing him of being right-wing anymore or Nazi or anything, guys. It's just a joke. Yeah. No snowflakes on the right.
No, it was... but I mean, still, his point was well made. In his view, that, the Muslims in the country are causing trouble.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've been very lucky here in Australia in the sense that we have got some more radical leaders.
Yes.
But at this stage, we don't have too many problems with things like Europe has, like with illegal immigration.
He mentioned Japan, who does not accept any Muslim refugees.
That's right.
They haven't had a terrorist attack. Well, not a Muslim-based terrorist attack anyway.
Well, I was going to bring up 2002 when they had that cult leader decide to release sarin gas all through the Tokyo rail system, but still. That's the one. Well said. I forgot his name, so I'll give you 10 points for that.
Anyway, that's not the point. But Japan doesn't have any Muslims, or as in they're no refugees at least. And Milo was very high on Australia's immigration policy. We are apparently, the whole world is envious of us and our immigration policy.
Well, I think our immigration policy is about what? I agree with Milo on this, and I know that this is a fairly contentious point for a lot of people, but I'm not going to go into full depth right here. But insofar as the only people that we should have within our country are people who can look after themselves, that ultimately will serve us as a nation, and so therefore we can better ourselves through true diversity, which is their skills, their culture, their understanding with our skills, our culture, and our understandings. That's sort of, to me, what diversity is actually meant to be. It's not about skin colour. I certainly, I don't want people to come into this country and just sit on the dole. I should put a note in here. Yes, we let New Zealanders do that, but they're our poor bloody country cousins. We've got to give them something.
Yeah, that's right.
We took Neil and Tim Finn. We owe them a little bit, all right?
Yeah. So he also mentioned Australia's Imam, Muhammad Tawhidi. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly.
Tawhidi, yes. Tawhidi. And I'm a big fan of his. I actually follow him on Facebook because I think he's got it right. Because he's the first one to admit that Islam, the Quran, but more specifically the Hadiths, have some of the most war-hungry, bloodthirsty, hateful, literal hate speech that has led and will continue to do so while people follow it to murder, things in the world against gays and women and people who aren't Muslim. He admits that, and he says, "No, this. We need to reform this because at the moment." The way we are going, this is going to lead to, eventually this will lead to a situation that we as Muslims can't win unless we, because everyone else is better armed than us for a start.
Yes.
Maybe it's time we change like the Christians did when the Reformation of Martin Luther came through. And if you ever get a chance to read his book, I suggest I can't remember the damn name of it, but that's fine. Go look it up. No, he just wanted to see the spoons. Yeah, Tawhidi. Yeah. He Google it. He's got a couple of good books out there about this subject. And basically, his whole thesis is sort of like Martin Luther King. No, it's not about works and witches or whatever. It's just about having faith. So he wants to change jihad into, as a concept, into a concept of sort of like with the Christians with the prayer and the meditation. Mm-hmm. So a part of your observation to your God is jihad, and the only jihad you should follow is the prayer, the meditation, certain foods. But, basically don't harm anybody because it says in the book.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We don't want to spend too much time on that.
All right.
We don't want to spend too much time. That's only tangentially related to Milo.
Okay.
Yeah. So after moving on from Muslims, he then went on to blow smoke up our asses. Which was, don't get me wrong, I love a good smoke up the arse as much as anybody, but it was really over the top.
Yeah, it actually took 14 hours for everybody's head to decompress down to normal size so we could leave the big double doors to get out.
Yeah, he obviously did a quick 2-minute Google search on Australia and Western Australia and was just riffing off the top 10. Western Australia should get more of the GST money because we produce more. Yeah,
the fact that South Australia's full of drug addicts, but we in the West, we're a very switched on group of people.
Yeah.
Even the drug addicts.
So it was very much like there's an F in The Simpsons, and there is a Spinal Tap comes to Springfield.
All right. Spinal Tap.
So they're playing on stage, and they're singing their song, and then the lead singer comes out with "Nobody rocks like," and then he looks behind his guitar and sees a sticker like where they're playing Springfield. And it goes like that. And it just sounded like that for Milo. He would just go from place to place inserting the name of wherever we are.
Well, that was the rock star Milo moment.
It was.
He's coming out like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz or something like that with his red ruby slippers. And he just wanted to rock and roll. And so it was good. But you're right, the tropes were atrocious, like the whole eastern states versus Western Australia sort of trope. Yep. The mining trope, you guys are the biggest miners in Australia. Yeah, let's just forget about Queensland, why don't we? But poor old Queensland. Okay, the two biggest mining states in Australia. But he sort of tried to play that whole trope. And it worked for the crowd. It worked for the crowd beautifully because, of course, all the crowd's like, that's what they wanted to hear,
Yeah. It worked for me initially too, but he just went on with it.
And several times through the show.
Yes.
Which is fine. It's really good if you're trying to trying to get across that you really like the audience, or maybe you forgot your liner notes and you had to fill 3 minutes of time.
That's right.
Well, it's like I saw, an aside, but I saw David Hughes a couple of years ago, and good old Hughesy.
Yeah.
We love our David Hughes, but he'd just come to our town from Albany, and he was so tired, man. The guy was like, he'd been in Western Australia like for 2 days, and Albany, he got off the plane from, I think he lives in Melbourne, so go from Melbourne, got off the plane in Albany, did a big gig there, and then he had all these radio interviews throughout the day. Finally made it to where we live, which is nearly 1,000 k's away for that day, and jumped off the plane, got straight in his car, taxi or whatever, came to the gig, and every second thing he had to say was, "Oh, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. What a great town you live in." And it's like, okay, yeah, you filler. And that's what it felt like to me. But
I actually found Kevin Buddy Wilson was very similar. He kept making comments about our local slum area, and he got the name wrong, and he was wondering why everyone wasn't laughing.
Well, but we can forgive KBW. He was probably half pissed at the time.
Well, he was, and because he's that kind of guy, he was actually talking to the audience, and he was talking about it and couldn't understand why we weren't laughing until we explained it to him, and then, I'll go back and change it in the song.
So next time I come around in 30 years, I'll know.
He sort of gave us a 5-minute best of lines for all that. But anyway.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and then came the moment that destroyed our night.
The question and answers.
Oh, God, were they terrible. Yeah.
If you watch it on YouTube, you watch his speeches and wherever he goes, the last half hour is always question and answers from the audience, and he, obviously depending what kind of questions they are, he will argue with people, he will agree with people, he will shake hands, he will kiss babies, that kind of stuff. So I was very disappointed when all it was Andrew Bolt coming in to ask him softball questions.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally half an hour of just reiterating every single point he'd made.
Yeah, but it was just boring. I mean, this is all taken place over like 2 hours. It's not like we've forgotten anything major.
Well, there was one very interesting moment, though, wasn't there? There was a moment where he was asked about, whether or not he really felt the way he feels about things, and he answered that in a typical Milo sense. And then the next question was from Andrew Bolt saying, "Oh, come on, seriously, you really can't feel this way about everything." And the mask slipped. And he sat there for about 30 seconds contemplating what he had to say next. He was, and his voice changed. He went lower, he went a bit deeper, he was in thought, and he was, and then suddenly he snapped back into character, and I'm going to use that word because that's very pertinent. He snapped back psychologically. You could see him slipping, the mask slipped off, he slipped the mask back on and went, "Well, I'm going to do it in the way Milo would do it. I'm here to be your saviour." I'm like, aha. So there is a huge element to Milo that is pure act.
I believe so. Like, I don't believe he believes everything that he says. I think a lot of it is an act, and he's doing it to get famous. I can understand that. I'm certainly not going to tell him that he's wrong to do it that way. And a lot of people obviously agree with whatever he's saying, so that's fine. But it was interesting to see him slip out of character for just that one moment.
Yeah, it was very interesting. But yeah, essentially it just ended with him, talking about everything come before. And the big disappointment, as you said, I was expecting some dissenters or even some people who didn't necessarily disagree with him, just sort of had a different point of view on his methodology to get to the same answer. I would have loved to have seen some of that stuff, and it just didn't happen. And so we had no protesters at the start, which was disappointing. We couldn't talk to anybody, which was disappointing. The jokes were just so badly telegraphed, it was disappointing. And then at the end, we had these soft, as you said, lo-fi softball questions with one interesting little bit where Milo nearly let us see Milo himself. I know we're not up to scoring just yet, and I don't want to give anyone the impression that the show was terrible.
No.
Because it was enjoyable. I don't think it was Milo at his flying best, and I think part of that was there was no protesters, there was no pushback.
No, well, okay, maybe this is a good time to bring up the protesters. So while we were standing in line before the show, talking to a couple of people around us, and we were talking about protests and things like that, they put us onto the Facebook site, Protest Milo, Yiannopoulos, Perth, or whatever it was.
Yep.
So obviously we all quickly logged onto that and had a look. And they had agreed to meet at Murray Street Mall. Now, if you're not familiar with Perth, it's basically broken up into the CBD is broken up into three sections. It's got Wellington Street, Murray Street, Hay Street, comes down to St George's Terrace. These are all parallel to each other, and then we are the next road over. We're at the Perth Convention Centre on Mounts Bay Road. So they all met, all 50 of them by the look of it, met on Murray Street, and tried to march on the Perth Convention Centre and got about 2 blocks and ran into the parade we were talking about earlier.
Now, can I just mention here that the doors opened at the convention centre for Milo at 6:30. We were all safely ensconced into the convention centre just before 8 o'clock. And these people decided to meet in Murray Street at 7 p.m.
So even if everything went well, they would only get there when we were walking into the auditorium. Yeah, it was a strange idea. So I looked at the videos online, and we'll have a link to them down below. And yeah, there was 50 people there, which is good. You know, we are let's say a working class state.
Yes.
Probably skews a little bit more right than most states.
Yep. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And so by the time they got there, and according to the video they did, all they did was they walked up once, all on their loudspeakers and shouting out something, and then they left. So we were safely ensconced inside and didn't hear a bloody thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that instantly sprung to my mind is, first of all, the Elizabeth Quay bus terminal is no more than 20 feet outside the front doors of the convention centre. So all they would have needed to do is, right guys, at 5 o'clock, when, you know, or 5:30 or whatever it is, we're going to turn up at the Elizabeth Quay bus station where all the buses in the CBD, like the cat buses and all that, end up anyway. And we'll meet there, you know. So we get there at 5:30, we'll set up, and then, you know, we can have our little protest. The other thing is, of course, they hit like you said, they went from Murray Street, walked down to Hay, and then hit St George's Terrace. The blockade was I think it was 2.8 kilometres long. So it actually took them it took them 5 minutes to walk from Hay Street to St George's Terrace.
Yep.
And then it took them another 40 minutes to walk around the parade so that they could come back to us on the convention centre just to be angry and yell at 3 security guards and the glass doors of the convention centre. You know, I mean, I'm really glad that in Western Australia, these types of people are that stupid.
Yes, definitely. Unfortunately, the ones in Melbourne and Sydney weren't so lucky.
It depends who you talk to. I had a friend who went to the Melbourne show, and she said that there wasn't that many protesters. Yeah, there were a couple of arrests here and there, but a majority of it, you know, the line was well protected by the police. I mean, it cost, I think, $50,000. There was about 30, 40 police there.
Yep.
So the police kept everybody nice and safe. The protesters sort of were away from everybody. Of course, some of the protesters were using 2x4s, which is, you know, when this is one thing that I don't understand. I don't care which side of which fence you're bloody protesting on, okay? You're entitled to your point of view. You're entitled to your protest. You're entitled to have your say. I have no problems with that. But when you start bringing weapons into it, that's no longer protest. That's now a riot as far as I'm concerned.
They have every right to be there to express their opinion. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But as soon as you're looking for a fight, that's when I lose all respect.
Well, that's right, and that's when, which is what happened. You know, those few people who were being violent, because the majority of them weren't being violent on either side, mind you.
No, absolutely.
But that's why there was only 7 arrests, and I'm actually I think it was between Melbourne and Sydney, because Sydney, of course, had all these big university protests as well.
I believe Sydney had 7 arrests and Melbourne had the 1.
Yeah, and you know, even though I may not agree with the people who protested against Milo, compared to what we've seen in places like America with
Blackley campus. Yep.
Oh, wasn't that a nightmare? They tried to burn... The Milo one was terrible, but they tried to do... I think they did the same thing with Ben Shapiro as well.
So, yep.
And you're just sitting going, what the hell? It's fine to have a point of view. So congratulations needs to go to the protesters against Milo for just protesting, just saying, hey, we don't like Milo. Mm-hmm. And thank you for not being violent and following your cohorts or comrades or whatever you want to call them in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and just on that, I can certainly see why you would protest against Milo. You know, if you don't agree with his policies, I would certainly not blame you. And protesting is a very reasonable way to get your point across.
Absolutely, and you know, and that goes either side. I mean, you know, I had no problems with the recent homosexual. Let's call it a postal vote. I know it was supposed to be a plebiscite. It was a postal vote. We had plenty of protests on both sides, and there was a little bit of violence, but largely speaking, they weren't friendly, but they certainly weren't over the top madly violent.
Okay, well that about sums up our experiences for Milo's tour. What were your final thoughts on the evening?
Okay, well, the first thing is I was actually really glad to attend. It's not something that I ever thought I would do, not because necessarily I agree or disagree with Milo. It's just the opportunity. I didn't think the opportunity would come up. The evening itself was very enjoyable. The pizza afterwards was just as much fun, unfortunately, I have to say, than the actual show itself. But I would give it 3 out of 5 simply for the opportunity, and there were some very enjoyable parts, specifically Damien the Greek.
Yes, absolutely. I would pay to listen to Damien the Greek speak again. I probably wouldn't go to see this speech again from Milo. If he came up with some new stuff, I would consider it. If he promised to have a Q&A session, I would consider it. But I'm giving it let's say a 2.5 out of 5. I wasn't totally impressed.
Yeah, so both of us thought it was good but average.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as I've been telling everyone, I thought it was fine. It's my sort of grade.
I think that I'd have to agree with you there, mate. If you, before we finish, if anybody listening to the podcast has got an opinion, if you went and saw Milo, if you didn't go see Milo, how you feel about Milo, we are people who believe in freedom of speech. So leave us a comment. If you enjoyed the show itself, subscribe, like, share, and we have a Facebook page that we're working on as much diligency as one can when you have 2 people who work full time. So please come and join us on our Facebook page. The link will be in the description down below.
Okay, thank you everybody for listening to our first podcast.
Thanks guys, I'm Googs.
And I'm Jesse.
We'll catch you next week. Good night.